I had always considered myself a lucky man. For more than a decade, my wife Rachel and I lived what I thought was a perfect life. We had our ups and downs like any relationship, but in my eyes, we had it all. We lived in New York, the city that never sleeps, and we were thriving in our careers. But it all started in a much simpler way. Our story began in a work meeting where we first met, both working for the same company, although in different departments. It wasn't love at first sight, but something about her caught my attention. She was intelligent, confident, and had this air about her that was unlike anyone I had met before. After a few months of occasional chats and lunches, we started going out. We were both busy professionals, but we found time for each other. Over time, our relationship grew stronger, and we moved in together after a year of dating. That year, we were still figuring out the ins and outs of being in a relationship, but something felt right. We were growing, learning, and building something together. A year later, things began to get better in our careers. We both received promotions, which allowed us to earn more money. This, in turn, made it possible for us to buy a house, something that had always felt like a distant dream. We took on the responsibility of a mortgage, but we were ready. The house we bought was modest, but it had everything we needed. We started building our lives in this new home, filling it with memories and plans for the future. Another year passed, and we decided to get married. It was a small, intimate ceremony, but it was perfect. The vows we exchanged felt genuine, and I knew we were in it for the long haul. Things were going well, really well. We were happy, we were successful, and we were living life on our terms. 4 years into our marriage, we decided to move to a bigger house. We wanted more space, and we found a property with a pool and a large yard. It felt like we were stepping into the next phase of our life together. Everything seemed perfect, and yet, as we settled into our new home, we continued to talk about the one thing we had agreed on from the very beginning. We didn't want children. The idea of having kids just didn't fit into the life we were building. Our careers were important to both of us, and we feared that raising children would disrupt the balance we had worked so hard to create. We both loved our jet-setting lifestyle, flying to different countries for work and holidays, and we wanted to continue enjoying those experiences without the added responsibility of parenthood. But then something changed. One day, I found myself in Florida for a work conference, promoting products for a large company. It was a typical event, networking, meeting clients, and getting things done. But by the end of the third day, things took an unexpected turn. Some of the delegates began to feel unwell, and before long, even the main speakers were affected. It was strange. The whole event started to feel off, and the convention center manager made an announcement that the event would be canceled due to an illness spreading through the attendees. He mentioned something about a sickness bug going around and advised everyone to head home. I quickly gathered my team and advised them to return to the hotel, shower, and change their clothes. I instructed them to isolate once they got home, just to be safe. Fortunately, none of my team seemed to be affected, but I knew of several delegates who had fallen ill. One had even called a doctor because they were feeling so sick. After the announcement, I made sure everyone was on the next available flight back. I decided to head home the following morning. When I arrived back at the hotel, I showered and changed, then tried to call Rachel. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Odd, I thought. She never went this long without picking up. I called her office, and her assistant informed me that Rachel had taken the week off as a holiday. I was confused. She hadn't mentioned any vacation plans when I left for Florida. I didn't leave a message. Instead, I caught the next flight back to New York. I arrived home early in the morning, picked up my car from the airport parking lot, and headed back. As I turned onto our street, something caught my eye. There was a black Audi parked by our front door. Rachel's red Jag was parked on the other side. This was strange. We didn't know anyone with a black Audi. I parked my car and got out. As I walked inside, I noticed clothes scattered around the floor. Some of them belonging to Rachel, others that didn't belong to me. My heart began to race. I rushed up the stairs and opened the door to our bedroom. The sight that greeted me was one I will never forget. Rachel was in bed with a man I didn't recognize. She screamed, and the man jumped out of bed, scrambling to grab his pants and apologizing profusely. My hands clenched into fists, and without thinking, I grabbed him by the neck and dragged him to the bedroom door. I threw him out, and he sped away in his car, tires screeching on the driveway. I stood there frozen. I turned to Rachel, asking her why. Why would she do this to us? To me? To everything we had built? She begged me, pleading for me to understand, but I was beyond reasoning. The trust that had once been the foundation of our relationship had shattered in an instant. We tried to salvage the marriage, but it was too late. 3 months later, we filed for divorce. We sold the house and split the proceeds. I left New York behind, severing all ties to the city, to Rachel, and to everything we had once built. I found a job in Virginia through some old connections, and I bought a smaller house. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a 3-bedroom home with a modest pool and yard, but it was mine. I made an offer on the house, and to my surprise, the seller accepted it right away. I had to get out of the hotel where I had been staying for weeks. The move happened quickly. By 3 p.m. on a Saturday, I was sitting in the middle of my new living room, surrounded by boxes. The house was quiet, the only sound being the distant rustling of leaves in the trees outside. I had a cup of coffee by the pool, but the water was green and needed cleaning. It was a shame because I had hoped to swim that evening, but the pool had to wait. I spent the night unpacking and getting settled. I had a microwave dinner and a couple of glasses of red wine. Exhausted, I dozed off on the couch only to be startled awake by a noise. At first, I couldn't figure out what had woken me, but then I saw that the backyard security light had turned on. I got up and went to the window. The light illuminated the pool, and I noticed something strange. The water was rippling, almost as if someone or something was in it. I was confused, but I figured maybe an animal had wandered into the garden. I went outside to investigate, but as I got closer to the pool, I saw puddles of water by the edge. When I looked into the pool, the water had calmed down, moving only slightly in the night breeze. There were no animals around. It didn't make sense. The puddles, though, they were still there. They led a trail to the back of the yard, and then, just as suddenly, the trail disappeared. I turned back to head inside, but that's when I heard a scratching sound. It was faint at first, but it grew louder. I couldn't see where it was coming from, but then I realized it was coming from the well at the back of the property. I rushed over, trying to figure out what was happening. The cover of the well was nailed down, but the scratching continued. And then, I swear, I heard a faint voice saying, "Please." I tried to lift the cover, but it wouldn't budge. I ran to the garage, grabbed a crowbar, and came back. The scratching grew more intense, and when I finally pried the cover off, a terrible smell hit me. The stench was overwhelming. I turned away for a moment, but when I looked back, I saw the underside of the well cover had hundreds of deep scratches, as if something or someone had been trapped down there. With the flashlight, I peered down into the well. It was deep, but my light caught something, an old teddy bear, some clothes, and something white in the water below. As I stood there, something brushed against my right side. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Then a small hand grabbed my left hand, and before I could react, it was gone. Feeling shaken, I called the police. By 10 a.m. the next morning, they had confirmed there were human remains in the well. They brought up the body of a young girl, no more than 11 years old. The police investigated and told me that the previous owners of the house had been foster parents. They had cared for a little girl for 2 years, but one night she disappeared without a trace. The foster father had always believed she was taken, but the police never found any evidence to support that claim. 4 months after her disappearance, both foster parents were found dead from an overdose. The only clue was the little girl's skull, which had a crack on the left side. It seemed that something terrible had happened to her. The police told me that the well had been sealed during the investigation and they had never checked it. It wasn't until I found it that the mystery was solved. As for why I went to the well in the middle of the night, I couldn't explain it. I just had a strange feeling that something wasn't right. After that, nothing else strange happened in the house, but I could never shake the feeling that someone was still there, and I made sure to leave the well sealed.